I was codependent. The simplicity of this really gets to me. Codependency is such a bitch to deal with. Having an absent mother made me so codependent on every woman I was with until I dealt with that shit at 19 years old. Even after dealing with it, felt like I wouldn't ever be able to be independent. It's a rough road, man. Learning the word codependent really changed my life. I'd been in therapy for about 4 years at that point, working through mental health and family issues. Neither of my therapists during that time ever said, "Hey, you have codependency issues." Started having panic attacks after a very toxic friendship relationship imploded and came across the word codependent in a mental health book I was reading to help cope. Bought a book on codependency. It had lists of symptoms and causes, and I found that nearly all of them related to past behaviors and life experiences, respectively. The book helped me immensely to understand the toxic behaviors I exhibit and seek in personal relationships. Course correction started almost immediately. When my next relationship turned toxic, I ended things before it blew up or triggered my mental health issues. All of my serious relationships have ended with one or the other, and usually both. Now I'm in the happiest, healthiest relationship I've ever been in. Edit. Book is Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. It's the book on codependency. Early study and therapy of codependency is very related to alcoholism and Alcoholics Anonymous, respectively. Beattie is very influenced by that. If the 12-step and religious stuff she talks about isn't for you, I'm not religious, myself, just kind of ignore it or find ways to adapt it to the relatable. Edit 2. I don't recommend diagnosing yourself, even though that's what I did. When I first read about codependency, it just clicked as a way to describe a range of major issues I'd already been working through in therapy. I wasn't identifying new unhealthy behaviors or childhood traumas or anything, just describing ones I was already keenly aware of. This was my ex. He went from me to his now wife. He has never lived alone. Who texts me wishing he never got married, that guy. Him and I dodged a bullet in the getting married department, but we have a beautiful little girl together that I'm raising all alone. Not opening up enough, saying I love you, or being emotionally 100% in. I've been in 3 or 4 relationships up to 1 year in length, but I've never been in love, although they have. I've always been a good boyfriend, but I've never been able to give all that I want to give and fully commit. I always thought about buying just because flowers on my way to their apt but never did, because it felt too serious. I always wanted to say I love you, but I never felt like it was 100% genuine, or maybe I just wasn't ready for the implications, i.e. that this is now a very serious relationship and we now have to get married or go through a devastating breakup. I don't know. I don't think I have a good understanding of what being in love truly means. I'm starting therapy next week to try to figure out how I can get over this hump and be the boyfriend or husband I want to be. Are you my ex-boyfriend? We dated for a year and he was always too nervous to buy flowers, say I love you, etc. He told me he had never said I love you to a girl before and he was too scared to say it to me. He's in his late 20s. He told me all the time how he cared about me, etc. We broke up because I couldn't stand the lack of affection commitment from him. Hoping and waiting for it to happen were crushing me. Was in a similar boat. I had feelings and urges, but chose not to act on them or even let myself feel them because I was conditioned to believe that it will eventually end, and I didn't want to feel hurt again. It's hard to let yourself feel and to be vulnerable when past experiences have taught you that it will hurt. I had to do a lot of real conversations with myself and found out it came from constant disappointment from my parents and early romantic relationships. I had to learn that it was the past and the new people are new people. They may hurt me, they may not, but I know I will survive if they do because I've survived before, and me not being vulnerable increases the chances of not finding someone who wants the authentic me. If they don't, then I'll know sooner and I'm free to find someone who does. From what I've experienced, this is a pretty common problem, but I have a really hard time saying the words I love you. In my household these words were very taboo, and I never said them or had them said to me. At 17 had my only real relationship. We were together 4 years, and among a few things I know I could have done better reflecting on it now, initiating saying those words I found impossible. If she said it I could, but I could never just say it on my own. I still find it impossible to say to anyone. It's the only thing that I just choke up at and say yeah, at every time. She voiced her concern at it, and I acknowledged it and told her I had a hard time saying it. She mostly understood as she knew my childhood background well, but that's not enough. You need to know your partner loves you. We grew apart from other reasons, but my lack of showing compassion, visibly putting in effort, surely sped things along. Still feels bad. For most of my early relationships, I was at my worst when I realized that the relationship was going to end. When I sensed that one or both of us had fallen out of love or was no longer invested in the relationship, instead of just breaking up like I should, I started doing shitty things. Like with one woman who cheated on me, I started going through her phone while she was asleep. I realize now that if my trust issues were that bad, I should have just left. With someone else, I could tell that she had lost interest and was looking for the right time to break up with me, so I did things that made it harder for her to leave, like making serious expensive plans with her months in advance. I should have just let her go. And at least once, when I knew I was no longer in love and wanted to leave, I stayed just because the sex was good. I still feel really bad about that because I was basically just using her for sex, and I think she knew and just let it happen because she didn't want me to leave. Yeah, it's crazy how relationships are contingent on a mutual sense of respect and consideration. My God, I remember when one of my exes, long-term one, just completely gave up and started acting indifferent and cold towards me, and could not care less about how I felt about the things she did. It really pumps up this anxiety that makes you feel insane. Like this constant super internal restlessness that just won't go away. Holy crap. I've known female friends with clingy boyfriends who did this, trying to trigger her guilt and/or gratitude as a retention tactic. I can't break up with him now, he booked this fancy restaurant for Valentine's Day. I can't break up with him now, he's taking me to visit his parents. I can't break up with him now, he already bought a plane ticket to come see me. But I never fully recognized it as a manipulative desperation tactic until you described it just now. That's a red flag I can watch out for in the future. Does the reverse happen? What I see more often is when the girl makes her issues her boyfriend's responsibility. That if he breaks up with her, she'll hurt herself or kill herself and it will be all his fault. Guilt trip him into staying with her by using emotional blackmail. Come to think of it, I've read stories where both genders do this. What were the other things you did to make it harder for her to leave? Thank you for sharing. And kudos to you for being self-aware and growing. Honestly, once trust is broken, communication breaks down, and everything goes to shit. If you are reading this and are in a similar spot, you have to address the underlying issue right then and there. My ex got caught using dating apps, and it took me a while to trust her after that. By then it was too late, honestly. She caught FOMO hard and never looked back. I never snooped while in the relationship, but I got really out of character after we broke up and rode to her apartment once and got caught there. So embarrassing, but glad it happened. Made me realize how stupid I was to be worrying about some girl who didn't give a rat's ass about me for almost half a year. It also made me take a hard look at myself and cement my belief system and what I want. I definitely didn't need the bad selfish tendencies she displayed that were illuminated by my therapist. She's a great girl, but she kind of lost the allure that made her attractive in the first place, which was extremely driven but compassionate. Now she is just on a warpath to success. I'm pretty disappointed with myself for how things went. She made a mistake, and I thought I was over it, but I really wasn't subconsciously. I thought the best way was to move on and let the past die, but I never really dealt with how it made me feel. I probably should have just broken up with her at that point because she was looking around for some other dick. Who knows? I know I didn't handle myself well at all. Looking back, I know there were situations that I would have reacted to differently if I didn't have the monkey on my back, worried she was going to cheat all the time. I fully accept the blame for that. Some of my frustrations come from the fact that she never really made up for what she did. She explained it away as just messing around, and it meant nothing. But it meant something to me. It just felt brushed aside or swept under the rug to me. Thanks for posting this. This has been therapeutic for me to get this out in writing some more. I am addicted to self-improvement and uncomfortable thoughts, so thank you so much. A couple of my previous partners refused to ever lose an argument. They would scale up the argument until I caved. This conditioned me pretty early on to avoid conflict at all costs, which led to some pretty unhealthy relationships. And going along with that, I was dishonest at times. I lied to avoid conflict, sometimes about really trivial things. I've been working on unlearning all of that. My policy with my current so is to just be honest about everything, even if it's something she doesn't want to hear. It makes things so much simpler. I was the opposite. I was raised to run headfirst into conflict and escalate it till it ends with me in a losing situation, as I would must prefer a lose-lose as opposed to them winning and me losing. This sort of happened to me too. I had to learn that my boyfriend now would never blow up on me like me ex had, so it's safe for me to tell the truth, even when I have made a mistake. Like our electricity got turned off because I was juggling the bills and that one had gone too far, I was terrified to tell him, and I felt so guilty I was sobbing hysterically, but he reacted like we are a team, which we are, and he helped me handle it and didn't blame me or react with anger at all. Instead, he was sorry he wasn't paying attention to the issue, and he comforted me. My ex would have torn me down and verbally or even physically abused me for such a violation. I had to teach myself that he was messed up, and this man would never be like that to me. It's safe to ask for help from him. Man, this is me in a nutshell. I lied to avoid conflict like the plague. Small white lies to keep the peace only got me in more trouble. I had some turbulent relationships with what I guess you would call toxic women, and started lying as a way to stop the abuse. Because it helped, I got so used to keeping the peace that I carried it into newer relationships which I didn't need to, and ultimately this became an issue. Unlearning survival habits when you don't need them anymore can take a while.